It was August of 2013. I was 12 years old and I had just entered the seventh grade. I remember my mom coming to pick me up from school early. We were heading over to the East Coast. Why? Well, there was a Category 3 hurricane in the Atlantic named Charlie, and it was projected to go straight up the coast towards Tampa. I was 12. I had no idea what this meant. The only thing I could picture was this big, dark, gray rain cloud knocking at my door, and when I answered it, going, "Here's Charlie," and blowing a big gust of wind into my house, destroying everything. I am now 26, and I have been through many hurricanes, including Charlie, Urban, Irma, Francis, just to name a few, some major, some minor. Because I've been through so many hurricanes, due to the fact I've lived in Florida all of my life, along with research I've done with NOAA, NASA, and the National Hurricane Center, I feel I can bring you guys correct information on the causes and effects of hurricanes. I did a poll with my audience, and 100% of my classmates have been through a hurricane, but 20% of my audience did not know how they were formed. So, in today's speech, after listening to my speech, you guys will be able to correctly identify the causes and effects of a hurricane. In today's speech, we're going to talk about the effects first, so the damage it can bring, along with the side effects of a hurricane, as well as what causes it. So how a hurricane is formed, how it is categorized, and how it dies down. To first understand why people freak out so heavily over these storms, we need to understand the damage. For example, let's look at Hurricane Katrina. In an article entitled Katrina Impacts, written by a website entitled Hurricane Science and Society, Hurricane Katrina brought an 1,800 person death toll, making it the third deadliest storm in U.S. history. Along with that death toll was an $81 billion in damage between Florida, Mississippi, and Louisiana, and it caused thousands of people to be homeless, causing 800,000 homes to be damaged. That's a lot. So what caused this? Well, there are many side effects that come along with a hurricane. The biggest one is storm surge. According to the National Hurricane Center, in an article entitled Hurricane Preparedness/Hazards, storm surge can reach heights of over 20 feet and span across hundreds of miles. This is coming from the ocean, and it can cause beach erosion, bridge damage, building damage, and even the loss of life. Along with storm surge comes heavy winds. These winds are over 75 miles per hour. 75 miles per hour, that's about as fast as we go on I-75. Because the winds are so fast, trees come down, power lines come down, and it can make it extremely dangerous. The next is flooding. With heavy rainfall comes heavy flooding, and these floodings can drown out houses, cars, and cause people to be stranded. Along with that can be tornadoes. Tornadoes are very mild, but they can happen, and when they do happen, they are weak, but they are still dangerous. So now that we understand what goes along with a hurricane and what kind of damage these storms can bring, let's talk about how they're formed. A hurricane is a tropical cyclone that forms near the equator. It needs two ingredients to form. It needs warm water, and it needs an unchanged speed and direction. According to NASA, in an article entitled How Hurricanes Form, last updated on April 11, 2018, for a hurricane to form, there must be warm, moist air that rises near the surface. As the air moves up and away from the surface, less air is near the surface, and this causes lower air pressure. The surrounding air will then start to swim in place of the air that had just risen, and then once that water starts to cool off, dark gray clouds start to form, and then as it starts to rotate, an eye is formed. A hurricane is made up of three parts. The first is the eye, which is calm due to the low air pressure. There's no wind. If there is, it's very, very light, and everything is nice and calm. The next is the eye wall, which brings your heavy, heavy winds, and this is the most dangerous part of the storm. And then the next are the rain bands, and the rain bands brings your rain, your thunderstorms, and your tornadoes. So when a hurricane starts to form, it starts out as a disturbance. A disturbance is anything that is 35 miles per hour or less. Once it starts to gain momentum, it is then classified as a tropical storm. A tropical storm ranges from 39 miles per hour to 73 miles per hour. Once it reaches over 34 miles per hour, it is then a hurricane. A hurricane is categorized in 5 categories. A Category 1 hurricane ranges from 74 miles per hour to 95 miles per hour. 95 miles per hour is about as fast as a cheetah. A Category 2 hurricane ranges from 96 miles per hour to 110 miles per hour, which is about as fast as a baseball on the baseball field. A Category 3 hurricane ranges from 111 miles per hour to 129, which can compete with Serena and Venus Williams as the fastest serve at the Wimbledon. And a Category 4 hurricane ranges from 130 miles per hour to 156 miles per hour, which is faster than the fastest roller coaster. The fastest hurricane is anything from 157 miles per hour or higher, and it is a Category 5 hurricane, and it is faster than in a high-speed train. So a hurricane is named because there's more than one system in the ocean at a time, and it starts from the time they are formed and it ends when they are over. If a hurricane becomes massive, the name is then retired. A hurricane starts to break up when it goes over land. So when it hits land, it'll start to go less and less and less. About 20% of you guys watch the Weather Channel more, and you will know that once it hits land, it starts to diminish. Islands don't count because they're so small. It's like a mini speed bump. It can also diminish if it goes into cold water, and this is usually when it takes a northern path because it doesn't have that warm water to feed on anymore. So now that you guys know what causes a hurricane, you guys can begin to prepare a little bit more. We have talked about both the causes and the effects. And I will tell you now that if I could go tell that little 12-year-old naive girl who thought there was an animated cloud knocking at her front door or anything, it's prepare for the worst and hope for the best, because things can be rebuilt, but people cannot.